Got all the new hoses. Stressed the guy pressing them a little so he didn't have time to blow them out as they normally do, so I did that in the garage. That ring all the hoses feed out through was kind of crooked, so at some point it had sustained some damage. We decided to try to straighten it out a little, so the tractor was brought over and a chain hooked up and tried to carefully kind of pull it into shape. When it finally started moving, it kind of moved a little too far. A couple of blows with the sledgehammer and it was damn close. It was kind of bent out a little, but the pipe and a little muscle and it kind of moved in. I had looked a little at using a little bit of a water pipe, kind of a stiffer plastic that I tried heating, but that didn't really work out. But in a garbage bag we found a piece of the old coolant hose we had replaced earlier that we decided we should cut open and add as a protection to that ring where all the hoses feed through. They showed a lot of wear. Several of the hoses we removed where they had rubbed against the sharp metal. Used a piece of actually new coolant hose for the top, kind of more rubbery. The lower part was a lot stiffer. Since the lid rests on this, we figured the softer rubber is better. With that all sorted out, it was just a matter of marking up some numbers on the hoses to correspond with the plan I had drawn out earlier. Here I'm starting to look at my thought of adding a Y connection to the feed that greases the bottom half of the crane base, because it has 2 points where it can be greased. One has a grease fitting on it right now and one had the central lubing. It seems to get enough grease as it is, and quite a lot of it is coming out here, but I figured it would be a little bit better to have it kind of get a little grease on both sides rather than just one side. And it's tight down there getting to that spreader block for the central lubing, but I eventually got it on there. The first time I had made the hose a little too short, so I redid it and made it longer, so now it has a Y block spreading it, so it will still send the same amount of grease there, but it has the option to go to both sides now, depending which sides is easier to go to. Hopefully over time it will be quite equal. With that done, we started feeding the hoses into place. For one of them, the return one for the like wall where you put the lumber against, where that can be raised, that one the adapter came undone trying to fasten it, so the adapter was removed and some sealant added to it and it bolted back in place. Then the hose for that was connected, and then the like hose clamp that held that entire block in place was bolted back up. Next up was the 2 hoses for turning the crane. These 3 were kind of held together with a protector, plastic protector, so we did the same thing now and added some protection to it. Once we had that all in place, we had to start looking at, oh yeah, I forgot, we had that super long central lubing feeding up to the crane. It had been repaired at some point and decided to replace that with a fresh hose. So measured that up, made it a little longer. Then it was time to start connecting the hoses up on top of the crane. Put a piece of wood there to kind of get a little spacing, because as it was before, it was kind of tight over that knee on top of the crane. The hoses were fed in at the bottom. We started with the hoses, most of them were going out onto the right side of the machine, so we figured we would get that side sorted out first. And it was quite straightforward, just following the numbers on the hoses, since it was all well marked. Was a little tricky, like figure out if it should go over or under, but I think we found a good way for it. Tightened up some of the pipes I had to remove earlier. Tightened back up that clamp situation that helps relieve the tension on the hoses. Here we messed up a little, and the hose that feeds the big boom tube hydraulic cylinder, we fed that on the inside of the rest of the hoses, and it should have been on the outside, so we had to undo that one and move it around. But we were able to fit the clamp on loosely at first and move the hoses around a little until it was quite evenly the bottom part. And then well, this plastic, the hole was too small, so I had to drill that out to have it secured to the clamp before we could wind it back on. Then we started doing the hoses for the other side of the crane. That was quite an uneventful. Went on there quite easily. Then on this side, the electrical part feeding the two lights up there, and that central lubing went on there. I tightened up all the clamps and pipes. I was gonna regret that in a little bit, because I had to undo them again. Tightened up the hoses for the big boom tube. Had to hold this because it wanted to twist a little. Here you can see the Y connection for the central lubing, and here I'm trying to fit that long hose feeding the spreader block up on top of the crane. And it's quite tight in there. It had to be fed through with the 3 hoses connected in the beginning. Here you can see one of those rubber mounts that holds all the hoses. Here it's all the hoses on the left side of the machine is put into that rubber block, helping relieve the tension. That's then put into a clamp. That central lubing and electrical part is in there also. Plastic protection was added on this side also. Ran into issues, wanted to move this lubing hose around, and the adapter started spinning and coming undone, and I also realized that the spreader block was way loose. Well, not held in place at all, actually. There were 2 bolts there and a nut that had come mainly undone, and 1 nut was missing, and it should have been a 3rd nut there also, but the mount for the 3rd nut or the 3rd bolt was broken. I ended up removing things, removing some dirt that was under the pipes. Found one bolt that was pressed under the pipes. Would probably have worn a hole in the not too distant future had it been left there in place. Could tighten it up with 2 of the bolts at least, but the mount for the 3rd bolt was broken. But that will be good enough for now. Some zip ties to hold the central lubing and electrical part, and a luggage strap to hold the hoses together above the clamp.